it's a hot day. I'm hanging in the sunshine. You should hit me with the splash gun so I cool down. Won't you come on over? We can party till the sun's down. Baby, let me buy you a drink while we're dancing a blink. I could go for some queen bee too. AC's going boom boom. If you're looking for some crazy in the sunshine, I'll tell you everybody's standing by the line for the water slide. You can come on over. We can take the roller coaster. And you know everybody's looking for a ride in the water slide. On a wave of good feelings. Well, it's just another Friday in paradise. So bring your A game, 'cause you know this party won't stop. We could never run out of time, sipping strawberry lime. You know I wanna share it with you. AC's going boom boom. If you're looking for some crazy, I'll tell you everybody's standing in the line for the water slide. You can come on over. We can take the roller coaster. And you know everybody's looking for a ride in the water slide. It's getting kinda crazy up in here. Got that DJ playing music, everybody wants to hear it. It's getting kinda crazy up in here. Everybody wants a ride in the water slide.
3, 4.
If you're looking for some crazy, I'll tell you everybody's standing by the line for the water slide. You can come on over. We can take the roller coaster. And you know everybody's looking for a ride in the water slide.
Water slide.
Yeah, it's a hot day. I'm hanging in the sunshine. You should hit me with the splash gun so I cool down. Won't you come on over? We can party till the sun's down.
Whoa. Then why isn't that stopping? Oh, hang on. I think I've got to stop it there. Good morning, everyone. G'day, everyone. How are we going today? Back for our usual Friday show. Let me just bring this in. It's been such a fantastic day today because I've... You're going to hate me because you'll want me to start the show, but I am a massive Liverpool fan. I mean, I know I'm in Australia, but I was born in England, and I absolutely have been obsessed with Liverpool, and today we've become the champions. And tomorrow's my birthday. It's like Christmas time for me. Hang on, let me just quit this because, oh my God. I'm going to say hello to everyone in a minute, but I've got to play you this. Now, this is when Liverpool played here in Australia. I'm going to do this. I know it's going to drive you nuts because you want me to start the show, but I don't care because it's my birthday tomorrow. And Liverpool have just become the champions. Now, this game was at the MCG, and I believe it's a record. There's 95,000 fans singing You Never Walk Alone. Now, I think I'm going to get blocked on YouTube here. They won't let me... they probably won't let me... They'll demonetize me straight away. But hang on, let me just see if I can bring this up because I've got to play this for you guys. Oh, I love it. All right, we're ready?
You'll never walk alone.
on, Liverpool. Come on. Come on, boys. I love it. Woohoo! Let me just quit that. Oh, I love it, honestly. So congratulations, Liverpool. We've been waiting, I think it's 30 odd years until the last time we won. So yes, it is my birthday. Thank you so much, everyone that's saying happy birthday for tomorrow. Yeah, it's birthday. Tomorrow, the big 61. What an old fart I am. I've just blown my monetarization for today, so it doesn't matter. It's worth it. I love it. So let me just see who's here. So let me come into the chat because I need to say hi to everyone. We are only in pre-show, guys. So let me quickly have a look. Let me stick pre-show on over here. So who was in early? Carl was here. Dana's also here. Steve, having my Milo. I am. I noticed Steve said that earlier. I loved it. Jim put in the comments, I had a thumbs down before I'd even started. I love it. There was a thumbs down before I even said a word. I love it. Honestly, haters are haters. They crack me up. Joshua gave a clap. Van said hello as well from Pennsylvania. Leanna say g'day, mates. Thomas said good evening from North Carolina. Leanna's also from Washington. Rod's from Ontario. Chris said hello, David. Warm day in Los Angeles, but a good day for a Miller Lite. What's a Miller Lite? Cheers. Jake said, when are Sony going to release this new camera? Oh, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. No, don't you worry about that. I have money sitting here for the A7R4, but don't think I'll actually need the 61 megapixels. Just want the autofocus and weather sealing. I'll talk about that in the first story today. Beat the downvoters. I love it. I know it was a crack up. I couldn't believe I got a thumbs down before I even started the show. Well, that is so funny. Jim said thumbs up. Greetings from Minnesota. John said hello from Maryland. Let me just make sure that's off too. Where are we? John from Bloomington. Is that Illinois, is it? Carol's here. G'day, Carol. How are you? Andre as well saying hi, y'all. Jim said hi, Carol, John and Dana. Steve said it's cold here. David's just getting his Milo. I am. Leslie said hi, David. Greetings. All good. Going for COVID-19 test today. Not looking forward to. I had the test, Leslie. It was nothing really. They just stick a thing up your nose and then down the back of your throat. But I didn't find it a problem at all. Jim said, yeah, the one thumbs down. I love it. I'm sure I'll have a few more before the end of the show. Nevak's here. Anthony also said, g'day, bloke. Michelle is here as well. John said, Leslie, doing better to know than not to know. Yep, certainly is. Joris is here as well. RVG is also here from Florida. Haas is also saying hi. Mad Max is saying, I have questions. Why hasn't Sony fixed a known issue with the A7R4 and the 2600 combo? Well documented now. All over Fred Miranda forums and reviewers have mentioned it. What was the problem? I haven't heard of that problem, so not sure. Brett's here as well. G'day, Brett. How are you? Leslie's also here. I tested myself recently. No symptoms. Only 66 is saying you've got to certainly look after yourself once you get a little bit older like me. Old farts we are. Sony has become complacent again, and I'm going to talk about it in the first story today very shortly. I just want to say hi to everyone. Leanna saying I love urban art. Oh, that's from the video I played at the beginning here with Rebecca. Yeah, I love it too. I love shooting around the Melbourne streets. Melbourne's beautiful. And Chris, you're right. Rebecca is beautiful. I'm doing a workshop with Rebecca soon. We've just been held back because of the COVID-19. but I will be doing one fairly soon, as soon as we're out of this lockdown situation. Guy with the camera said, "G'day, folks," as well. Then let just me check. I think I've said hello. Is it Alan? Go Red Devils. Oh, sorry, I couldn't pronounce your name there. Has said, was an Arsenal fan, but haven't watched Premier League in ages. Oh, I love the Premier League, yep. It's my English background, I suppose. Joris said, grats with Liverpool. I know, how good is it? And then everyone's saying happy birthday. Thank you so much. Yeah, it is my birthday tomorrow. Shush, Siri. Well, look, I just brought up the Manchester United game. Siri. Stupid, because you put your phone on silent and then Siri still works, which is interesting. So everyone's saying happy birthday, so thank you so much. I'm going out for dinner tomorrow night. First time in a restaurant since I've been in the US. So I'm really excited about doing that. We're going to Mexican. And in fact, the last meal I had in LA was a Mexican with a whole group of people that are in here. I mean, Carol and all that were there as well. Looking good, David. You wear it well. Oh, thank you so much, Terry. Yes, I am an old fart. 61, you need a nasal and ear hair trimmer. I love it. Thanks, Jim. All right, so we're going to get started with the news and rumours. I forgot to put the time up, so I'm going to have to go through this at the end. Just let me answer that. Happy birthday, David. How's your testing of the Tamron 28 to 200 going? I've finished all of the film footage, so the review, I'll probably start that today, so it may be up today or tomorrow. I love it. I think it is by far the best travel lens for Sony that's out there. Absolutely adore it. It's fantastic. I mean, really, really good. Just let me show you a couple of images. Let me just see if I can move this down. Facebook, have I still got them in there? Yep, just let me show you. I'll just show you a couple of ones. Here, let me open this up. This was just sort of an example of, how this can work. Let me just show you. Let me bring this back. Now, let me just reduce this down now. Now, I did one the other day, obviously, with a waterfall. I'm not sure whether you saw that one, but this was just testing it out to see what it looked like at 200 millimeter. And I shot Renee with this at 200 mil. Well, it was close to 200. I think it was 190. And this was shot with the A6 400. So let me just open up this one. This was shot with the A6 400 because I wanted to test it as well. This was shot at around about 150 millimeter, I think, on the A6 400, which is probably 200 the other way. So fantastic. I mean, it really is a great combination. I love the fact that you've got that 28 mil there if you need it. Sometimes it may not be wide enough, and I'll talk about that in the review, but just for travel, being able to go from the 28 to 200 is brilliant. And the focus is unbelievable. Great for video. I just did a video of it showing it with that as well. So really, really like that lens. And I've got stacks of landscape stuff and things that I'll be showing you as well in the coming days. So stay tuned for it. I really, really like it. I think it's probably, like I said, it would be the best travel lens that you could buy for Sony at the moment. So really good. Guy with the camera said, thinking about whether he'll keep the 28 to 75. I still would, but I'm probably going to get it once I start travel. Who knows when that will be, but I probably will get it later on, I think. Now, let's just take this pre-show off and we can come back to here. So we're going to talk about a few things today. We've got the A7S III rumours. Now I'm going to start it off. Here we go. You ready? The A7S III rumours. I think that's probably fits it. I probably think that fits it perfectly. I mean, I could have... Where's the cricket sound? What's a cricket one? Oh, no, hang on. That's the magic sound. I love this thing. Where's the crickets? I have too much fun on this show. It's ridiculous. So, what the hell is going on with Sony? I mean, seriously, I'm going to talk about this. Now, let's get stuck into it. Now, I know I'm going to get stacks of thumbs down in a minute, and this is probably why I'm never, ever going to be asked to represent Sony. Oh, boy. Okay, here we go. You ready for this? All right, let's have a look. So, let me clear that. Sony, this is according to the Sony Alpha rumors. Now, remember, I'm coming back to me for a minute. I thought this was going to be announced on my birthday, which is tomorrow. And I thought, because originally Sony Alpha rumors were saying it was going to be the end of June, that we'd have the announcement of the new a7S III. I was still laughing at that sound. The a7S III. Now, it's not going to happen because apparently, let me go to this. The latest rumor is now that we're going to get something at the end of August. Are you waiting for this? Oh my God. I mean, honestly, this is getting ridiculous. Now, let me just read this before I go on a rant because oh my God. So they're saying the end of August. They're saying down here that this week Sony started to show the a7S II successor to press and store owners. What's that saying? This week Sony started to show press and store owners. Now that's what they're saying. So they're saying that it's already out and people have already been looking at it. And it says, like I told you before, I didn't know until today that when Sony would actually make the general public announcement of the camera. Well, now I have been told that Sony decided to make the public announcement shortly after the Canon EOS R5 launch. The timeline for the public announcement of this. So they're saying end to middle of July. So like I said, it's I think now August. And the second Sony full frame camera by the end of August, early September. Now that other one is this wild rumor that they're talking about of a A5 that has no EVF. This is the latest rumors on that. I mean, honestly, I don't know why anyone would want to buy a camera without an EVF if you're dealing with anything, because it's so hard to see in the sun. You always really, it's better to have an EVF. But anyway, that's that rumor. That's what they're saying is the entry-level camera. But the interesting thing here is that, and this is where I'm going to break this down and talk to you about this in a minute, that they're saying that they've been told the reason is that Sony wants to unveil the a7S successor after Canon's EOS R5. Now, I'm going to talk about the R6 at the end today, actually, because I'm amazed at the specs on that camera. But they're saying that they want to they want to announce the a7S III after the Canon EOS R5 has been announced. Now, it's apparently going to be announced on July the 9th. So what are we, 2 weeks away? To position it appropriately with the price and marketing. If you think that's BS, there's no way Sony would wait for the competition. Read these facts. And there's some facts down there that it talks about as well. So I want to talk to you about this because there's two ways of thinking about this. One is that it's not Sony's fault. Sony have never actually said when this is going to be announced, and they haven't said that all along. It's more the rumor sites and everyone else, people like me, have been saying it for the last year and a half, I think. So it may not be Sony's fault in the fact that they haven't actually said this is going to be announced. But before we go on to the other part to this is that I think it's stupid now to go the way Sony are going, because if you remember Apple used to always keep things very, very secret, and you would never know what was announced until it was actually announced. Now, that was the marketing from a while ago. Now, the thing is that is now old marketing, because now even Apple puts out leaks, and the leaks come out and they're leaked because they always, Anthony just gave me $20 donation for my birthday. Let me see down here, Anthony. Let me show that. Thank you so much. That might make up for the demonetization of You'll Never Walk Alone that I put up before. So thank you so much, Anthony. I will get a tequila. I'll get that tomorrow night. So the thing is that just got to get my thoughts back now. Oh yeah. It's old thinking, because now Apple released the things. We know that's done because we get the exact leaks, and we know how the phone's going to look. We know how cameras are going to be, how many cameras it's going to have, the specifications, and all that is all leaked early, so that now gives people that sort of excitement and everything else building up. Now Canon did the same thing, because they announced the R6 and the R5. What was it, about 4 weeks ago, or even longer than that? I can't remember, but they gave a pre-announcement weeks and weeks ago about what the Canon R6 and the R5 was going to be. Panasonic also did it with their latest full-frame cameras as well. So the days, I think, where you hold everything back and all that sort of stuff is really old marketing, and I don't think it's a good thing to do now. So if that's the way Sony is going, I think they're stupid, because there's no hype there, and people may, in fact, eventually just say, look, I've had enough, which is what we did with Canon for a while. All the Canon shooters were saying, I've had enough, and we're going to go to Sony. So that was one sort of way. But Canon woke up to that, and Canon thought, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to release those specifications, and then that might stop people bleeding off and moving over to the Sony platform. So that's probably why Canon did what they did. Nikon now are also, I mean, if you look at Nikon, the latest cameras have been out. They've always been announced like with a pre-release before the cameras actually come out. Sony has given us nothing apart from we're going to get exceed expectations. That really is the only thing that we've been given from Sony in that regard. So I think Sony seriously need to think about their marketing and what they're doing here, because I don't think it's working, to be honest. I think Sony should, I know a lot of you are going to say, we'll get it when we get it or whatever, but some people are getting frustrated, and I think that's not a good move by Sony, particularly when you look at what the other camera manufacturers are releasing now. So I think it's a very flawed policy if that's the way they're going. Now that's sort of part one about what I want to say. The next part is if Sony are waiting on Canon to release their camera first, and then they want to announce the camera or release the camera. Now that to me is completely flawed. The reason why I say that is you would only do that if your camera beat the opposition. Because if it can beat the opposition, Sony already know what Canon have. And we really already know what the price is going to be. It's going to be about $3,500. The R6 is going to be $2,500, I believe, which is incredible money for when you think of what those cameras are. Now, excuse me. Now, now that Sony know what Canon have got already, because those specs now are probably going to be true, and it looks like Canon are going to hold off with the cripple hammer. Everything I've read looks like Canon are not going to hold back. Yes, we don't know some things like rolling shutter and things like that, which will come out when the reviews are there, but we know what the specs are on those cameras, so that sort of shows how that is. Now, I think Sony's worried. I actually think that Sony is terrified about what Canon is announcing, because I don't think they can beat it. Now, I know this is gonna it's gonna really make some of you angry what I'm saying, but I think if Sony had Canon beaten or matched, they would have already announced what they had. Now, there's two things about this. Yes, someone's saying drink your coffee. There's two things about this as well. You can't change the camera now because the camera has already been developed. Like I know I read in some of the sites that people were saying that they might be able to change something. That these cameras, whatever Sony announced next, has probably been 2-3 years in the development. So you can't just go around and change that willy-nilly. You can change firmware and things like that, which is interesting, but you can't change things very, very quickly. So let me just have a drink of my Milo. So I think Sony, to be completely honest, have rested on their laurels. And I hate to say this because I used to say this about Canon and I used to say it about Nikon. I think Sony have rested on their laurels. I'm hoping that I'm proved wrong. I mean, I really do hope that in a month or so, whenever they're going to announce this, that we're going to get something amazing and I'm going to be extremely happy and everything else. But I've got a feeling that Sony have been trounced by Canon. I think Canon particularly have been sleeping giants that have released, and I knew this was going to come because when they released the lenses for the EOS R, I said to you guys all along that the lenses didn't match what the bodies were. I always thought that the lenses were way better spec'd than what the bodies were, and I said it's only a matter of time until Canon releases something that's really, really good. And I think they've used all that time, all their R&D and everything else, and they're going to produce two amazing cameras. Like wait till you see the specs of the R6. It's incredible for what that camera is. In fact, the R6 is what I would like the a7S III to be. But I'll talk about that actually at the end. But I think Sony have blown this because I think, for starters, when Canon announce all of this stuff in a week or so, on the 9th, I think Canon, a lot of people are going to automatically then just jump in and buy that camera. So I think Sony have messed this up. I think Sony have messed this up badly. So it's either Sony marketing have stuffed up really badly and they're now waiting to see what the Canon's priced at and everything else. But we already, like I said, guys, we already know what that's going to be. I mean, we know roughly what's going to be. You know, it's going to be as it's spec now. Well, what are Sony waiting on? I mean, if they had something that could compete or even beat Canon, wouldn't you drop that now and then Canon would be screwed in 2 weeks' time because Sony would have one-up them? Remember, when the a7S III came out, that beat everything in its class at that time. Sony didn't wait for anyone or whatever with that camera. They just dropped it out of nowhere and then it blew everything else out of the water. And I don't understand what Sony are doing here because people have been screaming for these updates and they're not coming. And so it's pretty frustrating, and I don't understand the marketing of Sony. I don't understand what they're doing in the fact that they haven't even released anything to tell us what's going on. I think that's very, very old marketing, and in fact it's archaic. Someone just said there's a PlayStation 5 is the huge release, and you know, I'm starting to think, is that the issue? Like, because camera manufacturers have now dropped in money, are Sony pushing everything towards that PlayStation 5 with all of their R&D development and everything else, and then the camera division has been left out in the cold? And this is the thing that I'm now starting to wonder. I mean, I actually am starting to wonder, to be completely honest, if there ever is going to be an a7S III. You know, is it going to be an a7 IV? But even when is that going to come out? You know, and it's really interesting, their marketing, and I'd love to know what you guys think about this, because like I said, there's only two options. Sony Alpha Rumors just got the rumors completely wrong, and Sony just don't want to release it, and they'll release it in their own time, which could be a possibility, but I think that's stupid. Or Sony just can't match the Canon, and they're very scared now about releasing something because they just can't match it. And if that's the case, it's devastating, really, because, you know, Sony are just sort of holding back on it because they should have released this 12 months ago when they would have surpassed expectations. It's going to be very, very hard for Sony to surpass expectations now. Yes, they may bring out a global shutter and other things, but, you know, I mean, I just think they've waited way too long. I really do now think they've waited way too long. They should have done what Canon did, what Nikon did, and given us a version of what this camera would be. And if it's beaten by the Canon, it's beaten by the Canon, and so be it. Like I said, I'm in the Sony system, so I would still buy Sony if it was still comparable. It doesn't have to beat the Canon. As long as it gives me what I need, I would still be happy. But to not tell us anything is crazy on what Sony's doing. So let's go to the chat, because I'm just curious to know what you guys think about this, because, you know, I mean, I don't know. It's a bit crazy. I just really don't understand it, to be completely honest. So a lot of people were saying happy birthday for me tomorrow, so thank you so much, everyone. John said, boom, boom. That's the sound. I love it. I got 3 thumbs down. I knew when I started the rant I'd get some thumbs down. Sony don't want to lose the limelight to Canon. Maybe, Guy, but like I said, as a Sony user, I don't, it's not a problem with me if Sony don't beat Canon. I wouldn't be worried about that at all. All I want is Sony to give me what I need. And that's the thing with it. They don't have to beat Canon. But if they're just holding back because they are going to be beaten by Canon, is stupid, because all they're going to do is lose people to Canon. Like I said, if they brought a camera out similar spec to what the R6 is, I would love that, and I would buy it as soon as I had the money. I haven't got the money at the moment, but when things pick up, I would buy it. But a lot of people are going to jump on board the R5 and the R6. I can tell you that's what's going to happen. It might not be photographers, but videographers are going to jump in droves. And that's one thing that Sony always had. That's the reason why I moved over to Sony, because I thought at the time, I remember I was a Nikon shooter and I had no one that I could go to. I had to go to Sony because Sony at the time were the only full frame manufacturer that would give me video and stills at the same time. Now, because I shoot Fusion, that was a really big deal. Now, most videographers at that time were Canon. Now, a lot of them moved over to Sony. But now I can tell you that if Sony don't answer this, those people are going to go back, or they're certainly not going to switch over. And Sony have given nothing in that regard to try and hold anyone. And this is what is bizarre marketing. It really is bizarre marketing, and I don't understand it at all. Canon is still behind in full glass quality, just a larger aperture. I'm not sure if I agree with that. The Canon glass is fantastic. I think they're all good glass. Now, I think the Nikon glass is great, the Sony glass is great, and the Canon glass. They are also releasing much more glass coming up in the coming weeks as well, or months too. So I think they're all good. I think glass nowadays is almost irrelevant because they all have good glass now. Dana said A7000 any day now. Dana. Has said, David, A7S III announcing on the Judgment Day. Thank you so much, Anthony, for the birthday donation. Thank you. D said, David, the problem is not with Sony. The problem is with Sony Alpha rumours, as they overhype and disappoint all the time just to drive traffic to the website. Yeah, maybe. But it still doesn't answer, D, why Sony haven't put out anything like Nikon did, Panasonic did, Canon did. They all announced what was upcoming. Sony have given us nothing. And that's one of the big differences now in how the marketing's working between these different cameras. Remember, when things are really tight, and they are at the moment with the camera industry, when things are like that, you have to give your loyal users something to be excited about. You have to do that. Now, Canon did that. Panasonic did it, and Nikon have done it as well. And like I said, Sony are giving us nothing in that regard. So it's a bit frustrating. Adam Master said, how about some firmware updates for the a7 III? I don't think that's going to happen, but Go With the Camera said, I'm too cheap to go Canon. On top of huge and heavy gear, I'd only go Canon when they have the Tamron lenses. Can't just drop 10K for a hobby. Yeah, and that's why I'm not going to switch over. But you know what? If I had the money right now, and I was doing weddings and stuff, like at the moment I'm not because of the virus, obviously, but if I did have the money right now, I probably would jump on the Canon R6. Now, like I said, I'll show you that later on. I'm not going to do it, but if I had the money right now, that's probably exactly where I would go. Adam Master said, how about some firmware updates? Oh, I read that one. The a7S III is a myth. I'm starting to think that as well. Dick Hammer said, plus the FX9 is the main reason they haven't been launching the a7S III. They had to go back to us commercial guys. Yeah, and that may be, but I still think that's flawed because the A7S, if they had a good line of that camera, that would be a great backup or a great B cam to the FX9. So I think they will sell in tandem, and I don't think those cameras would be sold apart. Anyone that's going to go for an FX9 is still going to go for an FX9. You still need an FX9 for a reason. You have your XLR outputs, everything else that you want to do with that, the Venice color signs, all other things that you're dealing with that, having your hard drives that you can connect, things like that. So I think they would work in tandem, and that's the thing. I don't think it would cost them sales at all. Gene said, I find I haven't been using the EVF as much, except when I'm showing the models the shot since it's higher res. I use the EVF when I'm shooting video all the time because I'm outside and I can't really see it. I use the EVF all the time to check exposure. But we all shoot differently, I suppose, Gene. So, g'day, Ike. How are you? William said, hi, great to catch a live show. It's good to see you here. Why can't a aftermarket clever camera company, a hardware company, make upgrades for camera like EVF update for the a7 III? Well, I'm not sure. Perhaps it's... Remember, with the Sony particularly, the Sonys have the hot shoe that it's electronic, I believe, so I think it's patented. That's probably why they can't do it. Ike said, it was fun in games when Sony was the only player in the field. Now that the other boys have come to play, they don't seem as good as they once looked. Jubilee said, drink your coffee, it's going to get cold. Yeah, I did. Joris said, it looks like Canon is retaking market share. They lost to Sony after the a7 III got released. Just watch. And maybe. I mean, it certainly is an interesting thing. And if Sony don't answer this, they are going to get hurt. Like I said, wait till I show you the specs of the Canon. Anthony said, I agree. I feel like Sony messed up as well. Hugh said, can't change, especially with the COVID. Ike said, Nikon and Canon have been playing this game for decades. I'm not sure what made you think Sony was so special. Well, like I said, they were for me, Ike, because, like I said, at the time, there was no one could offer me what Sony could offer me. And I'm not going to change again. There's no way I'm ever going to now dump Sony and then go somewhere else. I mean, I love the gear that they have now. I just need something extra. Like I said, the 4K 60 for me particularly. But it might be that I get a second camera, though, just to shoot that aspect of it, because Sony just don't seem to be giving me what I need. But I'm not going to switch. Sid said, Canon wasn't playing with the lenses they planned for these bodies. Yep, exactly. And I think they did, Sid. I think Canon planned all along. And I've said that. If you go back, you'll see that I said that all along. It was only a matter of time before they brought out a good high-end camera. Maybe Sony has Canon beat and are waiting for Canon to formally announce so that they can say the competition doesn't compare. But see, the only thing is about that is if you had them beat, you would do it before because it blows them out of the water before they even start. Why give Canon the hype? Why give Canon 2 weeks or whatever time they're going to give them at the beginning where everyone would be so hyped up with Canon, they get all this advertising and specs. If Sony brought that out before Canon had announced it and they had them beat, Canon would have been blitzed. And that's the thing that I don't understand about this. That's why I don't think Sony has Canon beat, because I think if they did, they've known for a month what Sony, or even longer, they've known for a month what Canon had. So I think they haven't got Canon beat. That's just my feeling at this stage. But, you know, I mean, fire away in the chat, guys. I'd love to know what you think. Sorry, it's out of topic. Oops, where were we? Where were we? Sorry, it's out of topic. Which backlighting are you using with those purple? I'm using the Hue globes, so that's what I'm using in here. I just control it just from my phone. So that's what I'm using there. Sid said, Canon... Oh, I've read that already. Griffin said, the PlayStation 5 is the priority for Sony right now. The cameras will get whatever parts are left over. And I do worry about this and how they've broken the company up now. I'm just wondering whether with the COVID and everything else that's going on at the moment, that whether they've only got so much money or so much manufacturing can be done at the one time. So obviously the PlayStation 5 has now grabbed all of that sort of stuff that's going on and they can't get the cameras. Perhaps that's a case. Hugh said, facts, there is a PlayStation 5. It's a huge release. G'day, Dave. Sony is just sandbagging so they can put the wet blanket over the R5. John said, truth, PlayStation 5 is the moneymaker. Daniel said, good point. Canon will beat Sony in features. Sony will have to price match. The PlayStation 5 is their maker. Dana said, Sony is really a media company. Joris said, people in one of the A7S Facebook groups said they will switch to Blackmagic. I mean, I know people that Langston's done that. I mean, Langston went over to the Blackmagic cameras as well. I mean, he still shoots Sony, but he bought that for the video features. See, this is what now people are starting to do. And I think probably the same thing is going to happen with Sony shooters. They're going to switch to Canon, particularly if you need the autofocus. Sid said, I agree with the others. The margins are higher on the PlayStation 5 with game sales than the camera. Daniel said, delays from the electronic suppliers have only made things worse. True, but then why are Canon announcing it? That's the only thing, Daniel. So, I'm not sure what's going on there. What else? Gene said, the Canon webcam utility, flippy touchscreen and menu are really nice. The only advantage of Sony are the video specs and focusing, but it looks like with the R5 they might overtake Sony. Sid said, I don't think Sony camera users will abandon ship during this economy. You will take a bloodbath. Sony users will hold on. I agree, they will hold on, Sid, but they might buy it as a second camera type thing, which is what I would do if I was going to do it. I really don't want to switch to Canon. I'm the same for you. I'm not going to switch. There's no way. I'm not giving up my 135 and the A9 and other cameras. But certainly, like I said, if I had the money, I would be very tempted with the R6. I got tired of bouncing between Canon and Sony, so now I own both and I'm fine. Patience is key, especially in this market. The wait, I hope, pays off. Maybe they're waiting to see if the R6 has 422 so they could switch it on in firmware, maybe. The A7S III has less than 120 frames per second. It's dead on arrival. Ike said COVID-19 helps and hurts Sony in a way. It hurts because it probably messed up parts of the production, but it helped because since things have slowed down, they can't take their time because of the recession. I am too invested with Sony. I don't want to switch. Until the R6 and R5 are released and reviewed, we have no idea how good they are. And that's a good point. Well, that is the case. I mean, I'm looking forward to that too. Quinton said, happy birthday, David. Yeah, thanks. It is tomorrow, guys, so it's not today. Really looking forward at the Canon R5. It could be my video camera. Like I said, don't underestimate the R6 too. It looks incredible. I'm going to show it soon. Let's bow our heads for the moment in honour of Olympus. I'm going to talk about that next, Sid, actually. D. Cameron said they may be also giving us Venice colour. I'm hoping that is the case. Surely the A7S III would give us Venice colour as well. Oscar said, I think that is happening here is that Sony is using the same strategy they have used with the PlayStation 5 and their A7S III, holding back information because they are not as powerful. Maybe. My girlfriend prays every day that Sony doesn't develop an amazing camera. I think Kerry does as well, so I'd stop spending money. Sony has heard her prayers. I love it. Let me just see if there's any other things, because I do want to move on, or we'll be here all day. I'm a Sony user. What was that one? I've lost it. Doesn't matter. I couldn't wait for Sony. I couldn't wait forever for Canon and Sony, so I purchased the Panasonic SH1. But it would be nice to have autofocus. Yeah, that's the problem with the Panasonics. I already shoot Canon and will likely pre-order the R6. Yes, John, the R6 looks amazing. Julian said, happy birthday, thank you. David, who are going to buy these new cameras when most places are closed down? Why would Sony release now when they can wait for Canon releases and then blow them out of the water or match? Because they still would lose sales. Look, I'm not saying that... I don't know what the market is at the moment. That's the interesting thing. Like during the lockdown, it may be fairly bad. But when you look at sales and pre-orders, things that are out there, they still seem to be selling. So I think the thing is that they may just miss out. And this is the problem. I think if they had it, they would have announced it and released it, I think. Mickey Blue, I said, you're totally right. Sony needs to release the soon or lose out to competitors. Only a rumour, David. Too much guessing. Thanks to Alpha Rumours. Mad English TV said, I'm going to buy Canon to protect Sony's stupid marketing games. To protest. Okay, you're saying to protest against it. Yeah. And that's the thing. I just think, I think Sony's marketing at the moment is flawed. I really do think it's flawed. And I think if that's the case, they need to get over that. Thomas said David is whinging level 11. I love it. To beat Canon is not easy, as you say. Canon company is not even started. Is not started yesterday. Oh, they didn't start yesterday. Yeah. DCamera said, I'm on that Blackmagic 6K this year with the Zeiss CP3 rentals until I can afford to settle down payment for a full set of glass. Elaine said, I'm just so tired of Sony taking so long. I don't have the finance to continually upgrade, so I'm waiting years for the video spec camera. Sony are prioritising other things like gaming. And see, a lot of people are saying that, aren't they? A lot of people are saying that. Roland said, don't give up on Sony yet. I'm not. I'm just a little bit disappointed. Langston's here as well. G'day, Langston. Okay, so that's that done. Also, Roland said, I think the R6 is what's got Sony worried. I think you're probably right. I'm going to go on to the next story now. So let's talk about Olympus because this is really sad. Let me just come over here. Where are we? Oh, just to continue on this too, they're still saying 2 cameras are going to be coming. Just to go through this, they are saying that one has a 5 gigahertz model. That was the one that was registered, and there's another lower end model, which I said was going to be that R5. And there's also the 12 to 24 GM that code has been released as well. I just got another donation. Thank you so much, MM Kubro. Gave me $10. Happy birthday tomorrow. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much, mate. Really appreciate that. Let me find this. All right, so Olympus. Very, very sad. Jim said rant over. I knew I was going to cop it. I'm surprised I only got 3 downs, but I got 75 likes. So thank you so much, everyone. It doesn't mean I hate Sony. Look, I love Sony gear. Don't take this wrong. I just tell you the truth about how I feel. I love Sony gear, and I'm not going to switch, but it just frustrates me a little bit. G'day, Manny. How are you, mate? Good to see you in here. Olympus has... I think they're finished. This is also... Oh, I shouldn't be laughing. This is sad. This is terrible. I noticed here in Australia just yesterday, Olympus gear got a 25% off. Obviously because of this as well, I would say. I think they're finished. And that's a very, very sad thing to say. This company... that they've gone to, which is this, what's it called? It's called JLP, I think, is the company that's bought Olympus. What they do is they tend to purchase companies. Now, they bought the Sony Vaio. I remember that when that happened. Sony were not making money with their Vaio computers, so JLP bought it. But in the case of the Vaio, they still kept it going, but they filled it with awful components and other stuff like that. Like if you go into the user groups, I remember when this happened, if you went over to the Sony user groups, they were saying that it was just nowhere near the quality that the old Sony Vaios were. The laptops were really great. When this JLP bought it out and kept the brand name, they really destroyed that brand. I mean, I know still people probably still buy it thinking it's a Sony Vaio, but it's not. And if you went into a lot of the chat groups, that's what they said, in fact, that, you know, that they weren't made like they were filled with really cheap components and things like that, where they used to be really, really good. Now, this JLP has a history of purchasing companies that are struggling or things like that, and then they'll either put the money into them like they did with Sony Vaio. But when I say they put the money into it, they do it in a downgraded way of having things that it's just not as good anymore. You know, it'll be more cheaper components and everything else. Oh, John just gave me, thank you so much, John. I better show that. John just gave me a $20 donation. Have a whiskey on me. Thank you so much, John. So really appreciate that, John. That's what they do, this JLP. They'll either put money into it and then or sell it. Now, that could be what I think is going to probably happen here. Look, Olympus have lost money badly for 3 years, really badly. I expected this a while ago when they released their last camera, which was what? I think it was $3,000 Australian or whatever it was, their high-end model. It was still Micro Four Thirds, and I said to people then, they're mad. I said, there's no way they are going to sell that camera a Micro Four Thirds camera for $3,000 competing against APS-C and full frame cameras. There was no way that was ever going to succeed. And in fact, Olympus said in their statement about this that the reason why they think they've failed is due to the fact of iPhones or camera phones. So it's really hurt them very, very badly. So I think it's probably finished. I think this company has probably bought them for their patents. To be honest, they're going to sell it off. Now it might be that they sell it to a Chinese company or something like that. It'll be then become filled with the cheaper components and everything else, and they'll just use the Olympus name, unfortunately. So I think Olympus as a brand as such is finished. Now, that's just what I believe is happening. I think Micro Four Thirds, in fact, is struggling anyway. Panasonic saw the writing on the wall there, and they did release full-frame cameras. I think the future is APS-C, full-frame, and medium format. I think that's probably where, the future is going to go on this. So I think it's probably finished, which is terribly, terribly sad. Really, really sad. I mean, Manny just said, considering the state of the photography industry, I highly doubt they will rejuvenate Olympus. I agree, Manny. I don't think that's going to happen at all. The money's not there. Also, where on earth is a company like JLP going to get R&D to develop Olympus cameras? The R&D is incredibly expensive. There's no way they're going to be able to do the R&D that's needed to bring out better cameras than what they've got. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. In a shrinking market, the way the market's going with sales that are going down, I don't think this is going to be the end of the line for a couple of manufacturers, unfortunately. In fact, I noticed Sony Alpha did a poll this morning or yesterday talking about camera manufacturers, and they had this, which was, you could say, which camera do you think will be gone by 2025? And I'll come back to the chat too, guys. So, but they're saying that the next camera they believe to go will be Ricoh Pentax. So they're saying Pentax will probably go, and I probably think that's probably correct. Nikon was also really high up there as well. Then it was Hasselblad, Panasonic, none. Leica, Fuji, Sony, and Canon. So Fuji, Sony, and Canon were the least ones that they predicted would be voted out. But then again, this is Sony Alpha rumors too. So if they put this on a Canon site or a Panasonic site, you might have got a totally different perspective. So who knows? I mean, it really is interesting. But I think the whole marketplace is suffering. I mean, I think Sony is going to have to, most camera manufacturers are going to have to start thinking about what cameras they release and stop releasing so many, limit the amount of releases that are out there, and also, do an R&D and release these amazing cameras like what Canon have done and what Nikon have done with their latest ones. Sony is due. Sony is definitely due. I know they did the R4, which is a fantastic camera, but that wasn't a revolution. It was just a step up compared to the a7 III. I know a lot of you hate me saying that, but I've used it. I used it for 4 weeks, and I would not have said that the R4 was a generational leap over the a7 III. Yes, it's got better focus, it's got a better sensor, but it's not a generational leap, like what Canon have done with the R5 and the R6. I think camera manufacturers now are going to have to start limiting the amount of cameras that they released, but give amazing releases on those cameras to make us want to upgrade. Because at the moment, if you've got to really think, well, do I need to upgrade? Like they have to give you a reason that you want to step up from what you've got to a new camera. And at the moment, I just don't think that's it. So let me just open up the chat because I just want to see what people are saying about this. But it's sad. I mean, I feel terribly sad for Olympus. I really do. I mean, it's awful. I feel very sad for the people that have bought them. I certainly would not be buying them now, though. If you were thinking about getting into that marketplace, I certainly would not be buying into Olympus now. What else have we got? Mark's here. Hello, Mark. Like I said, Manny joined us. Daniel said, it's definitely going to be interesting in the current climate, what's going to happen. Zeus haters and Poseidon are in tears. Fruval said, howdy from Texas. Thank you so much, John, for that donation. Really appreciate that. John said, I'm so old, I remember Olympus being relevant in the film Digital SLR company. Yep. I think the problem was when Panasonic went over to full frame, I think instead of releasing that last camera, like I said, what was it, the EM1 or whatever it is, Mark III, OMD, oh yeah, whatever it was. But it was about $3,000 Australian, and I thought that was nuts at that price. They probably should have tried to go either APS-C or full frame, and I think that was a big issue. That was their issue, that they didn't do that. I noticed, like I said, Panasonic did it. Olympus should have had more foresight to do that as well, I think. Olympus going now makes me worry about for Panasonic after I bought in. Yeah, it's hard to say, Daniel. There certainly is. It's going to be a hard industry, that's for sure. Langston said, Olympus as a company will do fine. I think considering their investment in medical, it's just that, yes, the cameras are going away. Robert said, why the R6 instead of the bigger R5? I'll talk about that in a minute, Robert, because that's the next story. So I'm going to talk about the specs of the R5. I had an Olympus ELP. I think that was the one I had too. I had one of the ELP cameras. I've still got it, actually. I've still got it in my studio. Camera for my underwater camera, and then upgraded to the A6000. Sid said, happy birthday. Please give us a video as the angry photographer. It's JLP for Japan Industrial Partners. Manny said, considering the state of photography industry, I highly doubt they will rejuvenate Olympus, and I agree. I think Olympus is gone. Daniel said, and what about Nikon? Where are they in the camera game once Canon releases the R5 and the R6 and Sony releases something on the path to meet Olympus? I think, Daniel, I know Ike's going to hate it, but I think Olympus is definitely in trouble. I mean, we know that from their financial results. I hope Nikon survive. I hope everyone survives, because competition is good for all of us. This happening is not good for anyone. But yeah, I think Nikon may struggle too, and hopefully they can do okay. Flying High Low said, when the market is shrinking by 25% per year, it's nothing strange that the smaller company are throwing in the towel. Only 2 to 3 will survive probably. You know, and it's tough to survive. It's hard. And phones are making it harder and harder and harder. I know you guys always say a phone will never replace it, but it does for a lot of people. And it certainly has hurt these camera companies with their point and shoots and things like that. And as you know, I mean, who knows what we're going to get in the Sony, Samsung, and Google cameras, phone cameras, in another 3 years' time? Who knows what we're going to get in that regard? Delta Dave said, buy the Vio, get a free camera. I love it. I'm hoping only not 2 or 3 survive though, but you know, it's going to be tough. That's for sure. What else? Michelle said, my first digital interchange camera lens was the Olympus eVolt 500. It was a fun camera hobbyist. It's so sad because they've been around, 85 years or something, like a long time. I think Panasonic hedged their bets with full frame, and I think they will get out of micro four thirds. And I think you're probably going to be right, Sid. I think that's the way it's going to go in the end. I don't think Panasonic wants to be the only micro four thirds dealer. See, it was a big advantage when you went Panasonic that you could use the lenses from the Olympus and also the Panasonics on the same body. But now that Olympus are going to sort of go, you know, it's not good for Panasonic in that regard. Jim, thank you so much for Kerry's cocktail. As she sings happy birthday to you, I love it. What else? John said, I knew Olympus were done when they released that 3K Pro body. Yep, I couldn't believe it. I said that was just nuts. And I did say that when it was announced at the time. I should have found it. But I said that when Olympus released that at the time. I said, I think they're in trouble. Love from Singapore. Happy birthday, David. It's true. We don't need Sony to beat Canon. Just give specs which are relevant in today's time will do. Exactly. That's all we need, and that's all I'm asking. The A7S is ancient now, the A7S II. The XT4 is a good example. Mark's question is, where is this going? Which company is next? Yeah, I mean, who knows? It's it's pretty scary, Mark, that's for sure. Daniel said, I think we have to think about the brands that have other investments in different areas like cinema, pro video production, and the lens to back it up. Sid said Olympus patents, and that's probably what they've bought this for really, is the patents, are worth more than the cameras. JLP can't fix Olympus. If it were fixable, Olympus would have hired a CEO to fix it. I agree. I think Olympus is done. I really do think it's done as a camera company. They've shut down their only Ricoh repair centre on the West Coast here in California. Still haven't got my Ricoh fixed. On one of the YouTube sites, they said Sony had a stake in JLP, so Sony may acquire all the patents. At one time, Sony owned 10% of Olympus, but Sony sold their shares a couple of years ago. Interesting. Mark said Olympus and Pentax compete in the medical fiber optics medical instrument market. I used to work on those instruments. See, other manufacturers do that too as well. Nikon, Canon have big areas there as well. Chris, thank you so much. Chris gave an amazing donation too. Chris said, happy birthday and buy a few beers. Thanks, Chris. Really appreciate that. Just seeing what else people are saying here. Jim said the one-time CMOS sensor equivalent to 3 perf Super 35. I'm not sure what that was to. Jim's getting all technical. Or maybe they were running out of clock for some reason on the books until they could finally separate both their camera division. I thought he was talking about Olympus. Rosa's saying happy birthday. Thank you so much. Sid said, please tell Nikon not to release the Z5 with no EVF. I know, I just think it's crazy to release cameras without EVFs. I really do. But you guys might disagree with me. A couple of you did say that before. Do you think we are forgetting about the camera cinema video beast at the micro four thirds sensors too, but those may phasing out at some point. Yeah, look, they are amazing cameras for what they do in video. But remember, there are issues. I had the GH5 for a while, Daniel, but the problem is noise. The low light for those cameras is not good at all. The focus, particularly on Panasonic, is terrible. I mean, it really is not good at all either. So I think if you had the choice, you'd be much better to go to APS-C size or full frame. And I think that's what's going to hurt micro four thirds. And that, to me, was proven when Panasonic went full frame. Why are people comparing Olympus to Nikon? Olympus makes toy cameras for advanced amateurs. Nikon makes cameras for actual professionals who will always need pro-grade cameras, not toy loser four-thirders. Brett said, I hear Pentax are on the line. Yeah, Pentax are going to struggle, that's for sure. John said, Dave Oastler, the Olympus camera will still work. The gear will live on. Yeah, it will. I mean, it might be like the Samsung one that's still out there and still performing. Have to go, Dave. Your voice is out of sync. Is it really, Leslie? It's out of sync, is it? And that's it. All right, so let's go to the last story because I'm going to bring up this Canon just to show you how good this thing is. Let me just move this over. All right, so I wanted to talk about this because we've already gone through the R5. And the R6, it's interesting how the numbers go because the R6 is a lower model than the R5. So it's interesting how it works. Is my voice badly out of sync, guys? That's interesting because it's saying I've got excellent connection and everything, so I don't know why. So let me read the specs and then we can talk about this because it's saying, so this is the R6. This is the one that I would be interested in particularly. Like, I think the R5 is incredible, but I think it's overkill for what I would need. But let's have a look and I'll sort of talk to you why. So it says a little bit lost in the hype of the Canon EOS R5 is the Canon EOS R6. We broke the news of this model back in January and Canon hasn't done any sort of teasing for it. So this is one they haven't teased. However, some early specs have remained true over the last few months and now we have more information about the coming EOS R6. Yeah, people are saying, no, it's fine. Yeah, interesting. So let's have a look at it. The Canon EOS R6 is aimed squarely at people looking for high ISO performance, great video specifications, and priced for a lot of the shooters that are out there. So the specs are really interesting. So have a look at these specs. This is what's freaking me out. It's a 20 megapixel full frame sensor. Now, if you're after a fusion type camera, your voice is not noticeable. Oh, okay. If you're after a fusion type camera where you're after stills and also video, I think this ticks nearly every single box. 20 megapixel is ample. Remember, I used to shoot weddings with the D3S, which was 12 megapixels. So having 20 megapixels in the sensor is fine. It's got IBIS. So they've added IBIS. This is all extra compared to what, like the EOS R has, a lot of these things. 12 frames per second mechanical, 20 frames per second electronic. Now, we don't know whether that's going to be like the A9. It probably won't be, but it is giving you 20 frames per second. We don't know, too, whether there'll be any rolling shutter in that or anything else. That's still got to be tested, but I'm just talking about pure specs here. It's got oversample 5K video. Now, it gives 4K 60p. Now, this is the thing that I said I want Sony to release. Full HD 120. You've got Canon log. It's got 10-bit. We don't know if that's 422 or what that is at this stage, but it's got 10-bit. It's got the zebras, AF identical to the EOS R5. Now, we know for a fact that the autofocus now on the latest Canons after the latest firmware updates are nearly as good as Sony. It's not as good, but it's nearly as good. So the autofocus now is really not an issue at all. There's no raw video mode though, so you would need to get the R6 if you want that. It does have dual SD UHS-2 card slots. It's got head detection, animal detection IAF and things like that. It's got the 5 million dot EVF. Now, that alone is going to blow away any of the Sony A-series cameras where we're stuck on that 3.7 million dot thing. And I bet you any money this will have the same screen like the other. Well, it will. The LCD at the back will destroy whatever Sony have got, because the Sony LCD on the back of the screen is terrible compared to the latest cameras like Nikon, Fuji, and what Canon are using. No top-down screen. Build quality not as good as the EOS R5. Bluetooth 4.2. It's got Bluetooth 5 on the EOS R5. Same battery as the R5 as well. Now, the price is $2,500. Like, that is fantastic for that specification. I really think this is amazing, and this would be the one that would interest me. If Sony don't bring out anything at all, this would do me fine. I don't need the specifications that the R5 has. I don't need the 8K, the raw video and things like that. I'd be quite happy just with using this type of camera. This is what I want Sony to release. If Sony announced this type of camera, I would be completely happy. They don't need to beat the R5. They just need to match what we're looking at here with the R6. And I'd love to know what you guys think. I think this sounds to me like this is a perfect fusion type camera. You've got a decent sensor. Your 20 frames per second electronic if you need it. It's oversample 5K video. You get your 4K 60, your full HD 120. You get the Canon log, and it's also 10-bit. Again, the 8-bit, it causes issues with, when you want to grade and things like that on the Sony cameras, particularly if you use S-Log and things like that. So this, in Canon log, if you're shooting 10-bit, would give you a really nice result. So, I think this seems to be like it will be a real winner. I think this is the camera that's going to hurt Sony more than anything. This will hurt Sony far more than what the R5 will, because the R5 is overkill for most people. The R6 is really, from specifications, looking really, really good. And I'd love to know your opinion about this. If you're not in the live chat, please leave it down below, because I'd love to know your opinion there too. So let's open up Q&A. I'd love to know what you think about the R6 specs that I've just showed you as well. Let me just see back here. People are saying the audio is fine, so that's good. Yes, Panasonic went full frame, but they still use contrast detection. Yeah, they've got to get over that, Panasonic. They really do need to go to phase detection. It's something that they have to change. R5 equals 5D models, R6 equals 60. Oh, okay, so they've gone around that way, Joel. Okay, well, that now makes sense. What else have we got? Joris said, as a Canon shooter, I'm really interested in the R6 too. The 20 megapixels is enough for me. Yeah, it's enough for most people. Rosa said, is it too much to ask if you could use your influence over Sony for a firmware update for the A7R3? Focus box color choices. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get it, Rosa, unfortunately. I really do wish we get it, but I don't think they're going to give it to us. Ike said the camera industry is oversaturated in my opinion, which would be fine if the market was growing, but it's shrinking. Exactly, I agree with you, Ike. So only the ones who play at the high end and low end will survive. Tim said the R6 is an a7 III with improved video, 4K 60p and 10-bit and a better screen. Yep. Yeah, I agree. That's all I want, Tim. If Sony will give me that, I will be so happy. That's all I need Sony to give me. I'm hoping that the a7R4, this is what I think the a7R4 will have, Tim. I think it will be an equivalent of the R6. Probably have a few more megapixels, though. Has Canon's mirrorless autofocus stills caught up with Sony? Yeah, it's very close now. I think Sony is still ahead a little bit, but the Canon has improved incredibly. The Sony IAF is still the best IAF that's out there, but Canon have really done well now. Nikon have also done very well. The autofocus is not really an issue now on any of them, apart from the, like I said, Panasonics. What else? EVF will destroy whatever A7 have. The A7R4 has the 5.7 million EVF. Yep, and all the cameras need that now. Oh, thank you so much, ZV1. Gave me $4.99. My A7000 and ZV1 are the perfect duo. Where were we? Oh, yeah, we were down here somewhere. Ike, when I had my Olympus, I bought it specifically for the size. I bought it as an underwater camera and I was putting it in a housing. It was much smaller than anything from Nikon and Canon. The other thing too is, remember, the Olympus had by far the best stabilization of any camera I'd ever used. I think it was 5.7 stops, or is it 7? I can't remember. It was ridiculous. No, it might have been 7.1 stops of stabilization. It was nuts. The stabilization was like walking around with a gimbal. It was that good. Great to see you on a live chat. Oh, he's talking to Manny. Mark said the Sony beats a Canon in the EVF. No, I think it's the same EVF, Mark, I think, isn't it? It was the logical choice at the time. John said, if the R6 specs come true, Camera Conspiracies will just have to focus on his Vegetable Conspiracies channel. I'm sure Camera Conspiracies will find issues with it, John, just so he can keep going with that channel. But I know what you're saying, though, that's for sure. Where were we? There. Unfortunately, not a lot of people think to buy Olympus for the size, and that's what was interesting about when they brought that high-end camera out for $3,000. It was crazy. It was a big camera. It was micro four thirds, and I knew that would not sell. It was nuts. Entirely agree. The R6 is the Sony warrior. Yep, I really do think the R6 is going to hurt Sony unless they announce something reasonably soon. The Tide Tourist said the R6 is a competitor for the A7 IV, not the A7S III. Yeah, the R6, it's not a competitor. Yeah, it is. It's what the A7 IV, hoping that that's what Sony released to sort of combat that. Canon's done a great job with those specs. I agree. They have. They really have. Tim said Sony needs to release something that falls between the R5 and the R6 for the A7 IV. Or the A7S III. The A9 is closer to the R6, but without the video specs. And I still don't believe the R6 will get anywhere near the A9 with the sensor. Remember, it's the sensor in the R9 that gives that 20 frames per second without any rolling shutter. I don't think there's any way the R6 will give you the same performance that the A9 gives with 20 frames per second. But it might be usable in some situations, but I don't think it'll be an A9 or an A9 II. The stack sensor is the thing in the A9 that gives it what it gives it, and that won't have a stack sensor. John said, if you've got the R5, what lens would you get for video? I'm not sure, John. I'd have to have a look because I just don't really know what Canon have out there. But like I said, this camera certainly interests me for later in the year for doing my wedding videos and stuff. If Sony don't give me anything, this might be the camera that I get, and then I'll have to look at the lens options that are out there at the time. It's still expensive, though, because they're expensive gear. That's why I'm hoping Sony bring out something. John said, all I want is a perfect camera. What crap. I love it. Sid said the R6 and the R5 are beasts. The R6 might outsell the R5 at those prices in this economy. Yeah, I think too, Sid. I think the R5 will sell very, very well. We have got to 100 thumbs up. Thank you so much, everyone. Hero said, can't wait to hit the pre-order button on the R5. Ike said, Sony just needs to do this. Sony just needs that. All Sony had to do was put out 10-bit and 4K 60 in the A9 II and the A7R4. The A7R4, yeah, and no one will be complaining right now. Yep, I agree. JP said, that's all we need, 4K 60 and 10-bit 422, but I want that in the A7S or the A7 IV. I don't really care about the flip LCD, but the better LCD from Sony would be nice to have. Mark said the R4 is already out, laugh out loud. Perhaps you meant, yeah, I did. I meant the A7 IV, yep. Stabilizing the head of a pin, is it? Yeah, and that's the thing. It is easy if you have a small sensor. But remember, the ZV-1 is only a fairly small sensor as well. The stabilization they get on those cameras is nuts. But you're right, a smaller sensor is easier to stabilize. Ike said it's on par with the 1DX Mark III, then it will compete with the A9. Roland said the 24-105, suggesting the lens. Delta Dave said, love my Olympus, tough for pool and water shots. A micro four thirds camera with a 100-300 lens is much easier camera lens package to lug around all day at an air show than the A7 III. I mean, wildlife shooters love them as well. That's the reason why wildlife shooters love Olympus so much. You know, you get that amazing reach. The Canon 1DX Mark III is 20 megapixels and does 20 frames per second. It has got bad rolling shutter, I agree. The thing is, Ike, it doesn't have the rolling shutter that it doesn't have the same lack of rolling shutter that the A9s have, Ike. Frames per second is one thing. I doubt the R6 will have 60 frames AE calculations per second. I agree. It won't. Canon 28-70 f2 is exceptional. Thanks, Daniel. John said, I want the R6 kit with the RF 24-105 f4. John said, what if we didn't choose sides and just create beautiful art? Good point, John. Ike said, does it really YouTube? I haven't seen any reviews besides Frono did when he shot the 1DX versus the A9, and it looked like it kept up. The people that I spoke to about that, I know some Canon shooters, they said it's not an A9, Ike. I can only talk about what I've been told. 0007 said, hi from Cali. Been focused on music over photography lately, but stopped into thumbs up. Thank you so much, 0007. And that's about it. So we've caught up. So thanks for a really interesting show, everyone. I mean, I think it's been really interesting. Unfortunately, like I said, we haven't been able to give anything on the Sony side of things. But hopefully we'll get some news soon about what's going to happen. At this stage, though, I have to say the R6 is looking really exciting, really exciting. If they price it at 2.5, it's going to be a very, very competitive camera. And Sony are going to have to bring up something to answer that, which is going to be really interesting to see if they can do it. Let me know in the comment box down below what you think about all of this. It's going to be great because I'd love to know what you think about this as well. It should be a really good discussion. Apart from that, everyone, I'm going to head off and go and get a nice hot coffee because that one's gone cold now, and prepare for my birthday tomorrow. Stay tuned. The 28-200mm Tamron lens review will be up. Hopefully, maybe not today, but it probably will go up. I'm hoping tomorrow or Sunday, hopefully at the latest. So stay tuned for that review. And as a sneak peek, just to say to you, I'm really happy with that lens. In fact, I think it's by far the best travel Sony lens that I think you could buy for the money at the moment. It is amazing. A fantastic all-around lens. So stay tuned for that review. That'll be coming up very, very soon. And I've done video. I've used it with the A6400. I've done video on the Sony A6400 and also the A7 III. I shot with the A9 with it as well. So I gave it a really good test out. So, stay tuned for that. And that's it, everyone. So have a great weekend. Stay safe, everyone out there. And I'll see you all in the next video. Bye, everyone. Catch you later.